So now that we've got all our data connections done, it's time for the next step, which is installing the power supply. So we're just going to open up our power supply here. Saw through the packaging a little bit. There we go. And be very careful when using a sharp knife for liability purposes. Okay. Inside the power supply box, you'll find a power cable. This is what you're going to use to connect your power supply to the wall. User's manual, as well as a beautifully packed little Corsair bag. So we're just going to take that off and extract the meat of what's in here. The Corsair 450 watt power supply. There we go. So installing the power supply is actually quite simple for us because we're using a tech station. We're going to put it here. In a case, what you would normally do is install it in the top or bottom of the case, depending on which style you have. You'll have to check your case manual. But then you just install 4 screws at the back of the power supply, and that's how it's secured. As you may have noticed, since the last shot, this cable has magically transformed from being straight from the motherboard to the optical drive to being coiled up like this. I'm going to show you how to make your SATA cables a little bit tidier than we initially did them, using only a pencil. Just take the cable and start wrapping it around the pencil nice and tight until the whole thing is wrapped and it looks like this. See, I have the SATA cable wrapped around. Now I'm just going to take the pencil out, and there you go. You have a nice coiled up SATA cable, so I'm going to put that back in the back of the hard drive, and then plug that back into the motherboard. Right now, we've got all of our data cables plugged in, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this octopus of cables here, and we're going to turn it into power for the system. The first one we're going to use is this big guy right here. This is an NCIX 24-pin connector. So you can see that plugs into the motherboard, where this big long white receptacle is, just like this. There you go. Alright, so then the other power connector that goes to the motherboard can be one of 2 different ones. It can be either a 4-pin power connector or an 8-pin power connector. This motherboard uses a 4-pin. So we're just going to take it and plug it in up near, it's usually at the top left of the board, so that's where we'll be plugging that in on this board. Alright, there we go. The next thing is you need power for your drives. So since we're using SATA drives, we'll be using SATA power connectors. They're flat, and they have kind of an L-shaped groove where they plug in. Look just like that. So we'll need one of those for the optical drive. Okay. And then we'll grab our other set of SATA connectors. You can see you can have up to 6 drives installed with this power supply. And so we'll be plugging that into the back of the hard drive, just like that. Alright. The last thing we don't actually need for this system, but we would be using if we had, for example, if we upgraded to an 8600 GTS, then we would need a PCI Express connector. And that's a power connector that goes to the graphics card. You can see it says PCIe right on the connector here. So that would normally plug into the graphics card up near the top, but we don't have that on this one, so we will not need that today. Last thing. Any fans in your system, you'll need to use a 4-pin Molex connector, looks just like this. And then you can plug that into your fan, and that way you can be sure that your system will be cooled adequately. There we are, that's the power connectors. Alright, so now that we've got all of our power connectors done, what we're going to do is install our front panel connectors. So that's our power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. Also, if you have front USB on your case, then you'll be doing that here as well. So the first thing is the power switch. You simply take your little, you would normally have a longer cable leading to this, but this is what's included with the tech station, so that's what we'll be installing. So you take the power switch and install it on the little PW labeled connector. It's red on this motherboard. Next thing is the reset switch, which you will then take and plug onto the green connector. Please note that the color coding is not the same across different motherboard vendors, nor is it even the same across different models of motherboard from the same vendor. So you will need to check your manual for this, but it should be pretty clearly labeled in there. Next thing we're going to do is the hard drive LED. Just like that, so that demonstrates when there's any hard drive activity. The power LED goes right here on this motherboard, on this black connector. The end of the power LED that has the white square under it is where the colored cable should go. You can't really see this very clearly with the connectors we're using, but normally there will be one colored and one black. Speaker, you can see the red connector clearly goes on the peg marked with a plus, and that's on the orange front panel connectors here. There we go, and we've got our case speaker installed. Alright, and if you've got any front USB on your case, most cases these days do, you take your USB connector here with the red cables facing the end of the connector that does not have a hole. You install them over top, just like that. So that's the first one, and then here's our second one. There. One thing you'll need to be aware of when installing this in an actual case is that you need to use the I/O shield, which looks like this. You're going to take out the one that comes with the case just by popping it out. Then you install this using the little bumps, and then the motherboard slides into the back of it like this, and then your computer will look more like the back of a real computer. While we were off camera, I tied up all the excess cables into a little bunch like this. You want to take that, tuck it somewhere in your case, because that'll keep it out of the way of spinning fans, and it'll also keep it from impeding airflow in your system. You want things running as cool as possible for a gaming machine like this. So there you have it. We've assembled our good enough gaming system, and it cost us less than $600 for all the parts. Even less after mail-in rebates and such other things, but this will run pretty much any game out there right now at decent settings, and it's also highly upgradable for the future. Thank you for watching NCIX Tech Tips. I'm Linus Sebastian.